Welcome back to Open Window Politics. Today we're going to be doing a prediction between Governor Andy Beshear, the current Democratic governor of Kentucky, on the Democratic side, of course, and then on the Republican side, we'll be going with the usual contender, that being the current Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. So Andy Beshear has been floated as a possible Democratic contender for 2028. At the moment, he's not the most likely, but I do think he would have some more appeal. He's definitely has had to portray himself as more of a moderate. As you can tell, it is not an easy job for a Democrat to win a state-level race in Kentucky, so it is very difficult. As you can see here, it is a safe, likely state, and I do think on the presidential level, even if Andy Beshear was at the top of the ticket, there is just not much of a chance that Kentucky would even end up in the likely or narrow up very much. I think it might be slightly, but not enough to make a sizable impact. So that is why I'm going to keep Kentucky in the safe red column. And we'll be going through each of these swing states. I already characterized, we have the district here in Nebraska. Usually I characterize that one during the prediction video. This one I feel pretty good in stating that it would probably be in the lean blue category. Even Harris was able to win this district in 2024, and she did so by a pretty decent margin. So I do think that Andy Beshear's more moderate appeal would be a good indication that that little district would end up giving one more vote to the Democrats. So starting off the bat, we're at 226 to 219 with the safe, likely, and lean states characterized. We'll now jump to the toss-up states that are currently not listed here, but we'll be going through with tilt predictions for each of them. It's very possible some of these states that I'm going to characterize in the tilt column end up being further to the left or right than I call them. Ultimately, it's just a fun prediction, educated guess, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see if these two people are even the candidates in 2028. J.D. Vance has been more likely to be the Republican nominee than Beshear is to be the Democratic nominee, but still interesting setup. So I'm going to start out in the state of Nevada. I do think that Andy Beshear, especially if the election were to be held today, it is a pretty favorable environment for Democrats. We've seen some pretty key voting demographic groups, including Gen Z, younger Americans, as well as Hispanic Americans, have kind of gone away from Trump, more so by quite a large margin compared to 2024. In 2024, Trump was able to win the state of Nevada, so it's possible Republicans could end up keeping it in their column in 2028, but if the election were to be held today between these two candidates, I really think it would end up being in Andy Beshear's column. And then I've gone back and forth on Arizona. I think that this would be a pretty hard state for either candidate to win, really. I think it would be close. For now, I'm going to put it pretty much for the similar reasons I mentioned for Nevada. I'm going to put it in the tilt blue column. This state went to Biden in 2020. They also have two Democratic senators as well as a Democratic governor. So Democrats know they can perform well in this state, even though the state did go to Trump by the biggest margin out of all the 2024 swing states. It actually ended up being in the lean Republican column, so it's going to take quite a bit of work for Democrats to be able to take the state back, but I do think with these slate of candidates, with the current political climate, it would result in 11 more electoral college votes for the Democrat, Andy Beshear. I'm going to head on now down to the southeast. I'm going to start out in Georgia. I think Georgia would probably most likely end up in the Democratic column. We'll see how Georgia votes, but in 2025, there were some good elections for Democrats. Democrats performed quite well in. It'll be interesting to see next year, 2026, during the midterms. There's going to be a highly contested Senate election here in Georgia. This is John Ossoff's seat, so we'll have to see how that ends up turning out. I do think that at the moment Democrats are favored in that Senate race, but still going to be interesting to watch that state. And then we'll now go to the state of North Carolina. North Carolina, I think I'm going to actually put this in the Republican column. I think Beshear would have a chance at winning this state. It hasn't gone blue since Obama in 2008, so it would take quite a Democratic wave, and I just don't think, even with a good candidate like Andy Beshear, that it would end up in the Democratic column. So that is going to be J.D. Vance's first swing state victory. And then we're going to go now to the 3 Rust Belt states. I'm going to start out in Wisconsin and end with Pennsylvania. I do think in Wisconsin that this would most likely be a Democratic state. I think it would be close. Both J.D. Vance and Andy Beshear have some Rust Belt appeal. They are, of course, from neighboring states, being Ohio and Kentucky, so a bit of an interesting case there. They both have some Rust Belt appeal that could help really either one of them win these states. But I do think, just with the general favorable environment for Democrats at the moment, that it would result in a Democratic victory in the state of Wisconsin. And with that, that means Andy Beshear is 1 electoral college vote away from winning the presidency. And I do think if the election were to be held today between these 2 candidates, that the Rust Belt would probably vote together, then it would end up in the Democratic column. This is pretty much, this is the 2020 election results, pretty much exactly. Could be exactly. So definitely a victory for the Democrats. I think Andy Beshear would be a strong contender. I think there might be a better option, but I think that would definitely have some electability that would have him perform well, especially if the election were to be held today, between him and J.D. Vance. Feel free to agree or disagree with me in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.